I see this advice thrown around all the time on the internet, especially in my space with the gurus trying to sell you all sorts of, $0 down deals and all that kind of good stuff where they say you should not buy a job. If you buy a business that becomes a job that is not really a business, you're just paying a lot for a job. And in general, I actually do agree with this advice. If you are, especially if you're buying a bigger business, it should have some systems of leverage involved. But if you're just getting started when it comes to acquisitions, you're kind of a beggar. You don't have a lot of choice, right? Usually your capital is constrained, your resources are constrained, and you need to go where you can get the deal done. And honestly, one of the best places to start is looking at businesses that are sort of buying a job. You might buy a little agency that's doing 100 grand a year, and you are going to be doing almost all the work when you acquire that business. Now, here's the benefit of doing this when you are starting out. When you're starting out, you don't know what you don't know. And by getting something that's already profitable, even though you have to go and do the work, you know the service works. So you're not spending any time learning something that's frivolous that may lead to nothing. You are actually working something that is already proven to work. You just need to learn the SOPs, which usually this business will have it. The seller is going to train you on it, all that kind of good stuff. And you know the training will lead to profit because the business is making profit. Now, the other thing that's nice about this is usually the valuations for a business like this is going to be lower. At the end of the day, a solopreneur business is way less valuable than a business that has a machine of leverage, systems, people, processes, all that kind of stuff, right? So you are able to get into a deal much easier with lower amount of overall money and likely better seller finance or maybe even earn out to lower your own personal money that you have to put into this business. And the cool thing is, since you are buying a job that you already know makes money because you see in the profit and loss statement, your primary focus can be on growing and hiring people so you no longer have a job. And just by doing this, let's say you buy this agency for $100,000, or sorry, that is making $100,000. So let's say you buy it for 300 grand and say 24 months later, maybe you're still making $100,000. But that is after you're now paying a team that does everything for you, that you no longer are working as hard in the business. This is no longer a job, even though that's what you acquired. Now, a business like this probably will sell for say $400,000 or $500,000. So you have built real value added equity by you going out and acquiring a job. So in general, I think it's good advice not to buy a job, but if you're just starting out, it's not the worst idea in the world, because unlike you starting something from scratch, which is also you starting a job, you're actually getting paid for it, right? I always tell people, if you want to learn something, go get a job doing that thing. And in the business buying equivalent of that is go buy a business where you will be the primary person working on that business and fulfilling that product and all that kind of good stuff. Like, you don't have to buy an extravagantly large business, but this can be worth its weight in gold in terms of the kind of lessons you learn as you scale up this type of business. If you are afraid of buying a business where, like, oh God, I've been told I can't be, the head of the organization, I need to be off of the org chart, I can't buy a job, all that stuff, put that aside. Your main goal for doing this, when you're first starting out, you need to learn how to buy a business. And typically when you're learning, you don't have a crazy amount of resources, right? So you need to go where the valuations tend to be cheaper or where you can negotiate a better price. And one of the businesses you can seriously negotiate pretty hard on is a solopreneur business where you are effectively buying a job. But the other thing you need to learn is the ins and outs of digital business, of how do you run one. And you could buy courses. I love courses. I love masterminds. I'm in a bunch, but nothing gives you true practice like actually doing the work. And so with this type of business, you are doing the work, right? This is not a passive income machine you're acquiring. You are spending some serious money to have a job. But unlike starting from scratch, that job makes money. And because you are not only doing the job, but you are also the equity owner of this business, you are put into a very different setup than say if you went and got a job at an agency. So if you went and got a job at an agency, let's say it was paying you 100 grand a year, fantastic, awesome, you're learning a lot, but then you want to scale up. Well, as an employee, you might help scale up that business, but the business will always expect you to do more. You need to get more leads. You need to hire more people. And your reward for doing a good job usually is harder KPIs to hit. That's the way it usually goes for the employee's point of view, right? But if you go and buy, let's say, this $300,000 agency that's making you 100 grand a year, as you scale up, like, you are employing people, right? So your actual workload can go down dramatically. And over a period of 2 to 3 years, you can really have it systemized where you are no longer the captain of the ship in the sense that you're rowing all the boats and actually sailing and setting the direction. You actually have a team that's now helping you do that. So there is some wisdom in not buying a job, but I think it would behoove you to think of this a little bit differently, where especially if you're starting out, you're brand new, that maybe you do want to buy a job. You get into a deal easier. It has all the processes and systems for you to figure out. it can be an incredible growth opportunity. And the moment that it is no longer a job for you because you have systemized it, either through processes or people, the value creation that you created, even if you're making the same amount of money at the end of the day, is fantastically greater. So there you go. Short tip on buying businesses where sometimes it makes sense to buy a job. Don't listen to what the gurus say. Talk to you soon.